I think sometimes there's a little bit of a delay. So if we get this. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's 6:32. I'm going to call the West Hartford Clean Energy Commission meeting to order. On the call tonight, we have myself, Bernard Pelletier, Catherine Deviney, Energy Specialist, David Rowe, who is a resident interested in these issues, Joe Campanella, who's on the commission, David Mello, who's on the commission, and Stephen Sack. We may be joined later as people figure out the machinations of WebEx. If you're on this call now, or if you're watching it, it's easy to detect that this is a virtual meeting. We're not together because of COVID. It's important in that regard to recognize that we're able to have the meeting this way as a special dispensation for public safety. The meeting is being recorded and will become a public document. And with this small group, it doesn't matter, but if the meeting gets too much bigger, anybody that speaks, please identify yourself as you're talking. And Catherine, did I leave anything out of that script? Okay. Catherine, if it's possible, could you share the agenda? If it's hard, I can do it. Let's see, Catherine, you are on mute. Hi, let's see here.
Just give me 1 second and I'm pulling it up.
Very good. Just as we're waiting for Catherine to pull up these, just a point of information, the agenda is published on the town website. If you go to the West Hartford Clean Energy Commission, you can see the agenda and the meeting times. And if you scroll down beneath that, you will be able to see the minutes. Thank you, Catherine. Okay, so I'm going to call the meeting. I've called the meeting to order at 6:32, and if you could scroll up, Catherine.
Yeah, Bernie, give me 1 more second. I'm just going to make sure that the link is still working on YouTube. I did one thing. I want to make sure that it's streaming all right. Oh, there we are. And
Let's see. I know that the Conservation and Environment Commission is doing the same thing. Coming up. Do you see us on this screen, Catherine?
This is live.
it does.
So just click on it.
Let's see it anymore. Conservation and Environment Commission. It does say live. I can't find us anymore.
Let me go to West Hartford TV just to make sure.
Oh, here we are.
You found us?
No. October 27th.
No,
Very sorry. Sorry, guys.
it's okay. It's a sign of the times that we can't eat any food without taking a picture of it, and we can't meet together without photographing ourselves.
There you go. There's the third one down. Clean Energy Commission. There it was.
Oh, it was there?
Third one down.
Yeah.
There it is.
There we are.
There we are. Okay. We are there and they are viewing my screen. So we are all set.
All right, so we've, sorry about that for anybody watching. We're finding our way, so we've called the meeting to order. Could I get a motion to approve the August minutes?
I vote we approve the minutes.
Second that?
Anyone opposed?
No,
Okay. And I believe at this point, in terms of we sort of had a roll call before. I think we've been joined by Max de Boisson. So I think we've got that underway. And somehow or another,
I'm going back to the agenda. I'm sorry. It's me flipping around trying to do, okay, I'm all set.
okay, could you scroll up that agenda? I can see it stops for me at call to order. So if you scroll it up. Okay, so we have some old business. This is just the commission reports. These are basically standard things that we talk about as a matter of course. First order of business, we have been talking and strategizing on how to get youth representatives onto our commission, even as non-voting members. School has just started. I know, Catherine, you've had some preliminary conversations. Could you just give us an update where we are?
Yes. So I did send, can you hear me okay? Am I echoing?
You sound
Okay.
good.
I typed up an invitation for 2 youth commissioners. I sent it to the 2 advisors, one at Conard and one at Hall. Their names are Leanne Nolan at Hall and Mariah Cruz at Conard, the advisors of the environmental clubs, and asked them if they could designate a couple of student representatives for the commission, starting with this meeting this week. I did not hear back from Mariah at Conard at all. I sent them a follow-up. I did hear back from Leanne, who kind of missed the email at first, but then said she would share it with her students. So the message went out. We don't have any designated students yet, but I will continue to follow up. I did CC both the principals of Conard and Hall on that communication. And hopefully some students on the environmental club would be excited to participate in that. But the invitation has been sent, but no takers yet.
All right, so we have moved past the talking amongst ourselves and that we're at least talking to the outside world. So I guess that's progress these days. The next report would be the Sustainability Advisory Group, which has, I will just say, the unfortunate abbreviation of SAG. There was a SAG meeting actually last week, Wednesday of last week, that actually bumped our meeting to tonight. That's why we're meeting tonight, not last week. That meeting was attended by Matt Hart. I would say, roughly speaking, there were maybe perhaps 20 or more individuals from the town there. I was there. Catherine, you were there. Joe Campanella, I saw you appear for part of it. I'll recount what I think the meeting summary meant to us. I think they reported on, or Catherine, you reported on the fact that we've finally gotten the Sustainable Connecticut application off, and that's West Hartford's application for a silver designation. That would be up from bronze. I think there was substantial sort of, I'll call it, internal organization of SAG, where they were moving from their initial charge, which was to get the sustainable CT application off, to how are they going to function as a standing task force. Their reason for being, once the sustainable CT application is completed, is to really bridge the gap and sort of plug the holes that exist between all the different commissions. So for example, the Clean Energy Commission talks about clean energy. The Conservation and Environment Commission talks about conservation and the environment, and there's enormous overlap. There's also pedestrian and Bicycle Commission, which talks about transportation. There's a huge gap sort of around the whole general idea of transportation. And I think among their duties, and this is where it will intersect with us, will be how does the town of West Hartford put an umbrella over all of us and make sure that all of those gaps and cracks in covered areas are taken care of. Catherine, from your
Yeah,
perspective.
well, I'll just say that could be that could be a potential recommendation. Their charge is actually to make recommendations to town council on how to move forward on sustainability issues. So right now they are involved in kind of a gap analysis. What is covered, what is not? Is the structure we have now appropriate? Are there improvements that could be made? So that's kind of what they're analyzing right now. Their work will culminate in some sort of presentation or short report to town council about how to move forward with some recommendations. And they are a temporary group. They could turn into a permanent group, or they could suggest something else. I don't know. It's really up to them, but that's their charge and they're working on it. Bernie, I just wanted to remind you that the reason we're meeting half an hour earlier is so that people can be released at 7 if they'd like to visit the Conservation and Environment Commission meeting, which is discussing gas-powered leaf blowers tonight.
And I know, Stephen, I think you want to go to that, right?
Yes, I do.
Anybody else leaving? So maybe what I'll do is, Stephen, there's things that I want to make sure that we get to while you're here is, if I could skip over Drive Electric week, which is, we'll come back to that, come back to other reports. I want to let people know that we're making headway on HeatSmart West Hartford. HeatSmart West Hartford is an education and outreach campaign that really does two things. It delivers or makes it easy for people to get HES, Home Energy Solutions audits, HES, i.e. Home Energy Solutions income eligible audits, and provides education on heat pump technology, whether it be air source or ground source. And it does that by bringing in actual HVAC contractors whose role is one of education. So that is an MOU out to the town, which was submitted to Gina Verano for an overall look. And I believe she has submitted it to risk analysis, risk
Management.
management. Thank you. Stephen Sack has helped me identify a couple partners, ILO, Bantam. I've reached out to them once, haven't heard, but I will do that again. We do have Energy Efficiency Solutions, who has expressed an interest. They're based in Windsor, so we have one of two HES partners, and there's several HVAC partners that I'm going to reach out to. Absolute Air, which is based in Portland, Link Mechanical, which is based in New Britain, and I think Nutmeg is another one. I don't know where they're based. There may be others. One reason I want to speak with all of you is this is a volunteer team effort in the same way that Solarize was. So I would solicit all of you to be help us on this. So become team members. That might mean taking a role with outreach or putting together events, tabling, things of that sort. I'm also going to make that same appeal to the SAG.
Bernie, for my ignorance, could you explain what an MOU is?
Yes.
That's new to me, and yeah, so because I don't quite understand what that is.
I apologize, and as soon as I say it, you'll know what it is. It stands for Memorandum of Understanding.
Oh, okay, okay.
And
But but the understanding is what? That
understanding is basically there's a lot of parties here. So there's the town of West Hartford. What is their role in all of this? There's PACE, which is the nonprofit that I belong to, that is part of this? What is their role in this? What is the role of the contractors? i.e., this isn't a West Hartford endorsement of those contractors. This is those contractors coming in and offering to do educational outreach for us. So it basically outlines the roles, limitations, and obligations of people who are participating in this campaign.
But at this stage, it is just education. It's not a program to provide the actual hardware and
Right.
so forth.
Right.
So
So-
everybody
That is
still would
correct.
be on their own in terms, if they said this was a good idea, they would still be on their own to negotiate with the, right, okay, I get you.
Yeah, this MOU, David, really just provides a level of comfort. It's something the town would requires just to provide a level of comfort for them from a liability and a risk standpoint, so that they understand how this program is structured and that the town is not liable for things like you've just described. This is purely more of a marketing arrangement, an outreach arrangement.
But is there some kind of carrot here that is offered to these vendors that if a number of people signed on to this, that there would be some kind of financial advantage to them for doing that? I mean, is that the eventual goal of this kind of thing?
Yes, so that if sort of they will come in and do education with no formal quid pro quo, but in the process, if they gain name recognition, or if, let's just say that David Rowe, citizen of West Hartford, expresses an interest, then he might say, please contact me.
Mhm.
So that is an advantage, but it is not what I would say an unfair advantage, because part of the recommendation and the guidance of the HeatSmart campaign is that when you have a capital expenditure like that as an individual, you would always seek competitive quotes.
Mhm.
So it's
Right, okay, but
good. And in the minutes, I will say, if anybody is interested in pursuing this, we've got 2 active campaigns going now. One in Middletown, one in Guilford, and you can go to HeatSmartCT, all one word, .org, and look under our towns and see what's happening there.
Just to recap this pretty quickly. So it's really for the approval for the website that you were creating with the educational information, some preferred vendors on there, and then maybe do some advertising that West Hartford endorses this. And the memorandum understanding is that the town will let you put up a West Hartford link on that HeatSmart, correct?
Yes, and even a step beyond that, Stephen, we will ask the town if they'll send out a letter to residents saying HeatSmart campaign is underway. If you're interested, go to the website.
It's more like a roles and responsibilities things for participating in the program.
That is correct. Nobody, so if MOU was a puzzle, and I apologize for that, IHMH is also an even deeper puzzle. IHMH stands for something that I don't think anybody has heard of. It's called, it's a small nonprofit called I Heart My Home. And what it is an education, an energy concierge. So again, if we pick on our resident David Rowe, if he signed up with I Heart My Home, they would interview him and they would take his information and they would figuratively hold his hand and guide him through the steps of getting a HES audit, understanding the results, contemplating what the next best financially advantageous step would be, whether it be getting insulation, an air source hot water heater, new windows. In other words, if your goal is energy efficiency,
Mhm.
what's the best avenue to that? Nonprofit, vis-a-vis you. They get no commission, completely non-judgmental. They have an engineering bent. And that's a service that we're hoping to wrap into this program.
Mhm. So do they have a website or something to get smart on then?
They do, and I don't know that one off the top of my head, but that's a good thing to do. Thank you. I will put that in the minutes. The final point I want to make to you, and here's another set of initials. This is CPEEEI. That stands for Community Partnership Energy Efficiency Engagement Initiative. I invite you all to have a glass of wine and try to say that 3 times fast. But what it is Eversource and UI have a marketing budget. And so all of us have received emails, Facebook posts, driven down I-84 and seen a sign that advertises Energize or Energize CT or UI or Eversource. They basically have done is carved out a piece of that marketing budget, and they said for specific towns, if you want, rather than us just doing Facebook or ads in state publications, we'll carve out a piece of that to go to the town. So we are applying for a piece of that. If we get that, that will fund our ability to send out a letter at no expense to the town. It will fund us getting that website up and running, as well as printed materials, as well as bringing in a partner like I Heart My Home. And so that grant proposal is going into those people on Friday before 5 o'clock. Just to let you know that.
I understand that so well. Grant deadlines. Yes, I know it well.
It's a wonderful opportunity, but at the same time, one does have to turn oneself inside out to sort of meet the requirements of that. So that's been the effort, and I'm happy to do it. Happy to have the obligation, the opportunity, and I hope we'll be successful, and then we can actually get down to helping people in our town.
So I just want to thank Bernie. He has put in a ton of time on this grant application for West Hartford. He is also simultaneously working on one for the town of Bethel. So he's putting in a lot of effort into these initiatives, which I'm sure cuts into his personal life.
Well, thank you, Catherine. I will say that the town has been generous with your time, as well as very supportive from Matt Hart and others. So the thanks goes both ways. Okay. Let's see, it's 6:55. Catherine, could you scroll down? I want to see what's next. Okay. Stephen, I know you got only 5 minutes, but if we could flash up the energy plan next steps, I think, and I'm going to give Stephen the floor there just to say, because he's the one that really called us out, reminded us that we had actually talked about this. What you're looking at is really a blue box and a green box, and then there's, for each of them, there's a general and a municipal chunk. On the left is the near-term priorities for us, and on the right is longer-term stuff. So
In no particular order.
Thank you for that. In no particular order. And we, even though it sounds like we haven't been doing much, we have adopted a resolution that, number one, to support 100% renewable energy by 2050 and a new energy plan. So that was big. I can tell you that as we had hoped, other towns are taking notice and saying, how did you do that? Why did you do it? What does that mean that you did? So that's a good thing. We have been giving regular updates, Public Works and Facilities Subcommittee, although I think we can be better. Well, I think most of you can read, so I don't know if I want to read these quickly. Stephen, I don't know if you've had a chance to think about this, but is there anything specific that you want to call out before you go to the other meeting?
You know, I don't even know if it's really in here, is communication between all the commissions is one thing that's lacking huge across the board. But I assume, what do we want to take, one or two or three things and start just working on them, or kind of just like get an action plan for everything and then see what we think we can do and can't do? I don't know what we think is the best way to go about doing this.
So
Well,
go ahead, Catherine.
I think that was going to be part of the discussion tonight. If we're going to, we can still have that discussion. Steve, you won't be in the room, but you could add your input at a later date or at our next meeting. I think the goal would be to look over this list, see what we've done already. Like number 1, we can check up. We did number 6, invite youth representatives, although we don't have them yet. So we need to circle back on that. We're working on some of these things, but I think we should go down the list, and we can't do everything. You know, this HeatSmart one we've started, which is number 7 on the list, is going to take quite a lot of effort. So we should identify a few more that are high priority for us and then figure out who's going to work on them. Because I think we have to divide and conquer if we want to knock these off,
Yeah.
we don't need to do this sequentially with everyone working on one thing, but if people are interested in certain things, we can do that. There's one in here. Anyway, there are some other things on here we've started working on. So I think we should all, whether it's as part of this meeting or between this meeting and the next meeting, really take a hard look at this. And maybe we missed some things, which we can capture in another iteration of the energy plan, which is item number 14, update the energy plan. Maybe there are some things we want to drop off the list and other things move on. That's fine too. But I think there should be some key items that we identify and we put project teams together on.
And I'll just throw out.
And HeatSmart is the only one we get accomplished this year, then that's okay too.
I think this should give us a good roadmap of what we should be working on.
Yep.
So this is on the attachment that you sent out. So we have this list to go through.
It is. It is also page 24 of the town's adopted energy plan, which is on the website. It is a downloadable PDF on the website. This
is really great. I really would like to study this hard.
Good. And Stephen, to your point, I think you have a sharper focus, but number 13 is roughly in the neck of the woods that I think you were saying. Let's talk about the space, where things fall through the cracks, where we have overlap that doesn't make sense. It's a long sentence, but we're exploring a lot of issues with the town council and other appropriate commissions. So
I find, at the last town council meeting, I don't know if it's the last one, whatever, where the TCI was brought up, one of the commissioners from the Public Works Committee was like, we don't know what else to do. We have no idea. Like, sign this, join TCI, but we have no idea how to help our greenhouse gas emissions reduction with our vehicles. I'm like, okay, well, there's a lot of solutions, but you didn't talk to any other commissions that can help with that. And it's frustrating when all the commissions seem to be living in bubbles, and you've got experts in all kinds of fields all over the place in commissions everywhere. that can help with some solutions versus just signing a piece of paper where we could actually physically make some changes.
Yeah, and some of those, which I know are near and dear to you, down in the municipal section, there is an initiative, at least a stated goal of updating fleet plans to include
Yeah.
fuel reduction, fuel switching, e.g.
Yeah, I mean,
biodiesel.
that's near and dear to me, but I guarantee you there's everything on every aspect. You know what I mean? It's gotta
Absolutely.
be.
Yes, and I think you're right. The town's approach to sustainability to date and some of these issues is all over the place. It's scattered and it's not consistent. And I think some of the work that the SAG is doing now, some of their recommendations, as Bernie mentioned, number 13, both this one over here in the short term, as well as this one over here in the long term, and things like number 5, I think they need to all come together. And the council needs to be involved too in figuring out a path forward, not only in fleet, but in buildings, and waste management. And the path has to be clear, and the responsibilities of the departments, the commissions, the town council, it all has to be a coordinated effort. So I agree with you. And I think right now, the way they are approaching it is piecemeal.
Is there a way? So, what do you think the best way is to approach the town council or Matt Hart about trying to get the town to implement a new plan to do that?
I think the recommendations of the Sustainable Advisory Group are going to be focused on that. I think Matt Hart, I know Matt Hart is focused on that. I know that we have been having staff conversations about that as well. So I have voiced your concerns. I have some similar concerns, and I know he's aware of it. And I think they are working on it, and I think they're aware that the approach needs to be more coordinated.
Yeah, all right. I didn't know if we just say, hey, you know what, Mayor and Matt Hart needs to join one of our meetings here, and we need to bring this to them and let them be aware of it, and then maybe us to bring a solution to them, or work with Matt Hart with a solution to get some coordination efforts going.
Yeah. That's why I would like to really study this list and think about, what would be the strategy to accomplish one goal or another, and then, and then focus on that.
If I could jump in, some of these things, there's a fair number as I study this list that we can actually take off. So it is nice to have a list and be able to cross some things off.
I love that part. Yes.
That's one of my favorite things in life these days. But then second, I think we should, individually brainstorm and get our eyes together, and then so we know what we want as individuals, and then we can get together what we want as a commission, and then we have to start branching out. So I think.
Right.
Yeah, let me also say, I think I'll give you another problem-solving exercise to think about between now and the next meeting. Not only if everyone can review this list and we can sort of pick your individual priorities. One of the problem-solving exercises that I've been going around in my head on, and I know Matt Hart has too, and we were going to approach the SAG with, if they could, all the members of the SAG could kind of think about how to solve this problem too. Like, what is the right structure for the town that would promote coordination on a lot of these initiatives? You know, do we have the right commissions? What if you were to develop a structure that you think would work well, both, you know, to promote coordination between town council and town departments and different commission and even outreach to residents? What would that look like? So, you know, if like you said, Steve, we're all smart people. We all have expertise. So let's get some ideas, like brainstorm ideas of how to solve that problem, because clearly the way we're doing it now is not working. You know, there's some frustration out there on multiple people's parts. You're not the only one, but let's think about, you know, whether there's small changes, tweaks that can be made, or big ones, but let's just kind of think about it.
Suggest to the town to revamp an open line of communication across the board to everybody.
Yes, but so what does that look like?
Yeah. No, but,
Those coming down from above, like
yeah,
different
but
commissions.
just to plan how that might go.
Yeah,
Okay.
problem solve it. And you know, we can submit all these ideas to Matt Hart, you know, and see whether everyone comes up with similar ideas. You know, maybe there's something out there that we need to shift to, which would promote this kind of coordination.
And so, Catherine, case in point, and probably to answering Steve's thing with a solution. One such solution would be, let's just, for example, every quarter, a representative, or we have a joint meeting between all the sort of roughly equivalent commissions, like the Conservation and Environment, the Clean Energy, the Pedestrian and Bicycle, and perhaps one or two others. That's an example. Another one would be, again, just for example sake, would be we create one sustainability commission to which the little commissions get plugged in as subcommittees. So we have a reporting structure up.
Right. I like that.
Another might be just simply, as you said, open communication, where we just maybe every time we take our minutes and we circulate them to similar situated, say, this is what we did. Please give us some input. So something like that, something that institutionalizes, I think, what's obviously a desire of us all to be more effective.
No, I agree. Is it out of line to look for a professional group that could help reorganize this, or is that not something possible?
You mean recommend that the town hire a consultant to look over its commission structure?
Yeah, the commission structure, the communications amongst all the commissions and the town council, and you know,
I don't think it's out of line to suggest it. Whether they would want to fund that or feel it's necessary, that would be up to them. That's a potential suggestion.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna hop over the other meeting. I think this is great, and you know, I think it's gonna take some understanding of all the commissions and kind of realign stuff, and you know, stuff is getting sent all over the place, and have a much more clear line of where stuff goes. And then you know, you go back 2 years ago, who would have guessed that Clean Energy had an expert in garbage? You know, a member here. So you never know who's got some real specialty somewhere. You know, who would know that we have an expert architect on our commission here that could help? You know, so, you know, and then I'm sure this follows through on all the other commissions too.
No, it does. You're right. And just to add one thing to your list, Stephen, is I believe that the weather events of this summer, and I'm talking about George, Henry, and Ida, I think I sense to some degree a degree of urgency and a recognition of these issues that wasn't there before those events. I think it's, if it was the Wizard of Oz, I think we'd be saying we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. I think the weather events are reminding us that we don't have a lot of time. We have to up our game a little bit, a lot.
A lot.
All right, I'm gonna hop the other meeting. Thank you, and too bad this had to happen all on the same night, but again, communication problems.
Yep.
So, all right.
All I'll say is we were here first.
Bye, Steve. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I
We
think,
still have a quorum, so we can still proceed.
all right, Catherine, could you flash back? Well, should we? I think that was a pretty good summary. Anybody who's on still? Is Max still on? Are you here, Max? I saw Max come on, but now I don't see his face. Oh, there he is.
Maybe I'm off your screen.
There, no, there you are. You're back. Okay. Anything we would add to that? I think I have enough. We can write up a good next step for next meeting on this.
I mean, on the very last part of that discussion.
On the short-term and long-term recommendations, as well as Steve's specific point about more effectively integrating with the other commissions, I think.
Right. I mean, the history of how these commissions developed separately, what drove them. I'm sure there's a backstory to that is important to understand, that how you need to be aware of that before you could align common interests between these groups. I mean, they all have, from the sense of the titles and what little I know about what they're doing, they have very similar overall interests in what they want to try to accomplish, but they're doing it in different ways. And understanding better what those other commissions do, I need to become more aware of to think about how that could occur. But I don't see where that should be an overwhelming problem.
No, not at all. Let me agree with you. I won't go on at length, but the Conservation and Environment Commission, I think it seems like one of those exists in every town that I've ever gone to. So I think somehow at the state level, there's a requirement for such an organization to exist. They are empowered by statute here in West Hartford.
Okay.
Our group, the Origin Story Air, and Joe Campanella, I think, was there at the, if not at the birth of what was then a task force, near the birth of our task force. It was really, as people began to realize that there's a different kind of energy called clean energy, and how do we get more of it? And that was a state campaign, a utility campaign, actually. So that's where we came from. I don't know where pedestrian and bicycle came from, but I do think understanding the origin story, just like understanding where Captain America came from, it's good for comic books, and it's good for us as commissioners to understand.
Right. Yeah.
Okie doke. Catherine, can you shoot back the agenda there?
Yes. Sorry.
No, not at all. I think that what I recall is something that I have been agreed to do and haven't done, but I know that Max has done, which is the Drive Electric meeting on October 7th.
Yes, I can just say we have organized with the library. Maura Boudreau helped us organize through the library a little informal question and answer session where we have already recruited 4 or 5, depending on if we count Bernie, residents who own electric vehicles. Matt Masunas, Max, Christine Feely, and Luciana Grandstand, someone on the Sustainability Advisory Commission, who are going to play the roles of the owners and just give a brief intro on what car they own, how long they've owned it. Max sent us a beautiful intro slide of his new Volvo, and then just open it up for questions that to have kind of a neighbor to neighbor Q&A about what it's like to own an EV, where do you charge it, you know, how much does it cost, like what does it feel like, all those just kind of regular questions people might have. So we're going to do that on October 7th. Unfortunately, we couldn't schedule it for this week. This week currently is National Drive Electric Week, and there are lots of events happening throughout the state. There's actually a Drive Electric website with a lot of those events listed.
No. It sounds like you have enough people for that. I mean, I drive an electric car and I could do it if you need me, but it doesn't sound like you need me.
What car do you drive?
A Bolt.
A
Yeah.
Bolt.
I
Steve,
think you already have them. Though mine isn't supposed to burn up as much as the earlier ones, but nevertheless, I do keep it outside the garage and charge it outside the garage.
Yeah. Hey, Bernie, Ted, I think Bernie's going to do the intro so he can represent the Bolt. David, I appreciate your offer.
Right.
Feel free to join and, you know, chime in if you have an opinion, because it'll help our attendance too.
So that's it being held at the library?
It's a virtual session.
Virtual, okay. Oh,
Yep.
I'm sorry, I saw that, right. So
There's
sure.
a registration link. So we should ramp up some outreach around there. The library is doing its own outreach, but I will circulate the flyer that Maura, it's a beautiful flyer that she created for us, and we can kind of help spread the word. Bernie, Ted, I did email Ted to see if he was interested in giving the Tesla perspective, but he never got back to me. I don't know if he didn't see my email or what. But,
yeah, we don't, at the current time, we don't have a Tesla owner, which is rare. Usually these events are filled with Tesla owners.
I have a neighbor who has one. Let me ask him whether he'd be interested in doing it.
okay. If not, and Bernie, if you talk to Ted, I don't want to bug him, but do you think I should resend my email?
No, I think he probably read you the note. So especially if David has a neighbor,
Okay.
and Max or anybody, I know, for example, Joe is thinking of getting. Perhaps we should also do a little research, which I guess I could volunteer to do, about new models as well. So we could talk about. So something I think we should talk about is plug-in hybrid versus pure battery electric. That's one distinction. Different.
I'll cover that.
We have owners of both. We have
Right.
owners of both battery electric vehicles and plug-ins. So we will have that perspective covered. And Matt Masunas is going to do a spiel on incentives and that kind of things. We weren't planning to do the technology piece. This is framed as a non-technical Q&A discussion. Hopefully people joining, I mean, they're free to ask questions along those lines that we can answer, but we weren't going to include that kind of in the part of the presentation. Hopefully they've attended a different electric vehicle week presentation, which went over that. Or maybe we can promote, I know Providence, Rhode Island was doing a kind of comprehensive presentation along those lines.
And at this point, there's a lot of information out there. So I think what we're doing is really appropriate for our town.
Bernie?
Question. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I sent Bernie a link this week. I probably should have sent it to everybody, but it was the state of Vermont's website called driveelectricvt.com. And I visited it, and it was very well done. And I wasn't sure whether anyone knew if the state of Connecticut has something similar. I couldn't find anything on Google, but
Joe, I could not find anything. I know that there's a lot of material on Deep's website about incentives, like the cheaper rebate. But something like this, find an EV that's right for you. What about charging? Those things.
right.
It is a nice website, and I'll
So
put it.
I have to say I'm so proud of my home state. Of what they have done, that little old Vermont, my God, they're, they're so ahead of the East Coast.
Are they?
Yeah, in talking about communication and how to set things up, if there was a way to contact Burlington, Vermont and get kind of their take on how they've set things up, I think they figured out something that works. And
Yeah.
I don't know. So that was a thought that I had tonight also concerning Vermont. So
Yeah.
maybe David, you have any contacts in
I
Burlington?
still have a few contacts left there. I moved out of there many, many years ago, but I just look back and my goodness. I mean, part of the reason they've been so successful is that they have a public energy commission, a company. They don't have private. They don't have a private for-profit, energy company.
Yeah.
And so they
They
have
own their
more.
own utilities.
Their own public utilities. They have a lot of Tesla batteries. They have all these incentives to get batteries and to put solar on their houses. So it just the incentives are so different there of the public utility group that's different than here where it's all private and for profit. And so that's part of the reason. And it's small. It's small.
It is, but I'm a big fan of not reinventing wheels. So if Germany is ahead of us somewhere, or Denmark,
Learn from them.
Vermont, I think there's an appeal to just this cross-fertilization. I think people would be interested in knowing about. I bet you Vermont would be. We probably have a thing or two that Vermont would be interested in as
Let
well.
me see what I can do. Let me pull a couple of things and see if I can get any interest of some from them. I'll see what I can do.
Joe, I mean, we can obviously ask someone like Matt, either as part of the Q&A or just on the side,
Sure.
whether he knows if Connecticut is going to develop such a website or suggest that they do and provide the Vermont example. Or, if we feel strongly as a commission and a town, we can always write a letter on behalf of the commission or something to Deep recommending that they develop such a website. So if you'd like to draft a short letter to Deep suggesting that, then we could sign it as a commission,
Right.
or again go up the chain and see if the town council would get behind sending a letter like that as well.
Okay.
Catherine, I'm going to just share something. It'll bump you when I share it. So this is what's on the Deep website. It's a lot more busy and a lot more complicated than that nice little Spartan graphic that on the EV side, but it does have the cheaper, and I don't know, I can't remember what that exactly stands for, but that's the incentive. And it does have access to charging stations and it has stuff there, but I think I agree that it doesn't feel as clean and as inviting as that little Vermont website.
Yeah, and I don't know how you found that, but I guess you dug deep, and I just didn't go far enough.
I'm gonna, Catherine, you can share again and boot me. I'll put,
Sorry, Bernie. I think I accidentally muted you by mistake too.
I'm used to that, Catherine.
I mean,
Um,
the other thing that, the way I discovered that website was, the Vermont one, was I was listening to a radio station in Vermont. And, you know, they have all kinds of kind of marketing ads for these sustainable entities, or this website. I heard about it over a radio, and then, you know, you hear about how you know, you should recycle your batteries, and I don't know, it's just, it's a different environment, and
so I will mention, Bernie mentioned it earlier, but some of the work that the SAG is doing
yeah,
and some of the discussions that have been, some of the ideas that are being batted around is this whole idea of
public announcements.
well, ongoing communication aimed at residents, educating residents about sustainable lifestyle and why it's important today for people to change their behavior and, you know, get off the bandwagon of, you know, I'm entitled to this, I'm entitled to that. Like, people need to start at living more sustainably. And so how do you communicate that message? So some of the ideas that the SAG have been batting around is there may be a recommendation for two types of groups. You know, one more aimed at how do we educate residents to be more responsible in their lives and make smarter decisions, and getting them to make those decisions and act on their own. And then another type of group which digs in and works with more on the municipal side with town to kind of work on the policies, you know, maybe offer streamlined programs and tax incentives, or, you know, the municipal fleet plan, or whatever it is on the municipal side, policy, ordinances, you know, those kind of things to enable that. But they're kind of two different things.
Right. Was that the change management that they talked about?
A little bit like that. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, my hope is that, I mean, I don't know if we're going to change the entitlement part, but to me, the argument has to be economic. We need to make an economic argument, because everybody agrees with the economy of an argument. If it costs less overall long term, to me, that's the argument that I would love to try to develop.
Yeah.
Wherever possible.
Yeah. So I think that group, the outreach group, yes, they will have to develop multiple reasonings for different audiences on why these decisions have to be made. You know, some people will react to climate change. Some people will react to economics. Some people won't react at all. And that's just.
Right. So much. That's for certain. That's for certain. Right.
Excellent. Before we jump off the commission report, we had those three things called out. Any, Joe, Catherine, any other things that come to your mind? I could not think of any.
So this is, we're under new business now.
We would be on to new business. We've done HeatSmart. We're happy we can revisit it. Catherine, maybe scroll up a little bit.
Yeah, we kind of jumped around tonight.
So
there was, I did have a thought listening to Matt Hart, and then you have it listed here with the St. Brigid's Building. You know, they're going to do an evaluation, or they're going to do a study of what should happen on that site with the community center, what kind of initiatives get supported, right? I think that's what Matt said, that they probably hired an architect or some.
Yes, yes, and that was actually news to me. So Matt did mention at the Sustainability Advisory Group, Matt Hart, the town manager, mentioned that for the St. Bridget building, which the town recently purchased at 100 Mayflower Street, which they're looking to eventually either remodel or rebuild entirely into a combined community center and library facility, I think is the plan.
Right.
That they will be forming a committee which would include residents. That is, I don't think hasn't happened in a while for West Hartford, a building committee that includes residents to kind of look at options, work with the architect, give community input on that project. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, it sounded wonderful. Will you be offering some advice to?
I will be offering advice. Bob Palmer, the director of plant and facilities, will be the project, the lead for
Okay.
plant and facilities. Bob and I have a good relationship, and my input will obviously be taken into account. But I think sometimes it's easier for some of that input to come from the community than from down within one of the departments.
Would this be the type of project that they might consider a microgrid?
They might, if there were other key facility, if it makes sense.
Right.
I think we are definitely, it's not absurd to reach for net zero at all. I mean, I think this building's going to be a lead net zero building. I was recently participated in a whole day net zero conference that Eversource offered. There were some good modules. Some of the speakers were from Manchester and Mansfield, who both towns have been focused on building net zero schools recently. And even during the webinar, I emailed the director of plant and facilities over in Manchester to get a copy of their RFP that they used, and his input. Bob Palmer knows him very well, of how they went about outlining net zero as one of their top priorities in the RFP. The fact that it did not impact cost at all. It was a really nuts and bolts presentation, very good for a lot of packed content for municipalities. So I'll be looking for avenues to share that. I've already shared a lot of it with Bob, and we'll be looking for avenues to share that back up the chain as that project gets up and rolling and as they look to hire a design team.
Yeah.
They also mentioned that they were going to recruit for this building committee using a similar process like they've used for recruiting SAG members or the Affordable Housing Committee or the Police Community Review Board. So I think there will be an announcement from the town that they're looking for individuals to serve on that committee. And I'll make sure that you guys all know that that's out there when it arrives.
So, yeah, I mean, again, with a microgrid, my thought was, obviously it's a community center, so that would be something that should be powered. And then Elmwood has, such a, more or less vibrant downtown that not all, could be powered. It would kind of make sense, I think. There's grocery stores there, and I don't know. Bernie, you might want to talk a little bit about the passive house, affordable housing that we walked through.
Yeah, and Joe and I and one other individual attended a public housing complex. I think this was iteration number 3, which was actually built to passive house standards. And Joe, I'm going to ask you to talk about it, but before I turn it to you, I just want to say on this topic, and I intermittently attended the same conference that Catherine did. One of the keys is that when you commission something like St. Brigid's, for example, as early as possible, you lay out all the potential options, because what happens all too often is you will have hired an architect, you will have commissioned an idea, and it won't be net zero, it won't be LEED, and then it's too late. And so if we do nothing else, then widen the field of vision to include more than sort of turn the crank style, make the pizza. I'm not saying that in a derogatory way.
Right.
But to recognize there are so many more options now than there were even 10 years ago, that a fresh look is needed. And Joe, why don't you just tell them a little bit about what's happening there, because it's a perfect example of a fresh look.
Yeah, so it's a low-income housing project that is being built to passive house standards. And Bernie did ask the question, how much more does it cost to do this? And I think the reply was honest, 3% of a construction cost. But when you factor in the cost, the energy costs, it's a no-brainer.
Where did you see this house? Where did you learn about this?
This was it was something that was sponsored by the Connecticut Green Building Council,
Really?
and the project is on
Is it Maple Street? I think
I mean the major street that goes by there. It's
This is in Hartford.
it's in Hartford.
Really? On Maple
What's
Street? Oh,
What's the high school?
it's
What high school is it? Is that Weaver?
Weaver, I think. Yeah.
Just north of Weaver High School.
okay. Right. Oh, good.
Very attractive. The whole thing about the passive is that you're paying very close attention to the construction of the projects, and making sure that there is no air leaks in the envelope. So it just means that you're constantly examining that external envelope and making sure that there are no air leaks. And once everything's enclosed, then you must ventilate.
Right.
For reasons that you need to put clean air into the structure.
Right.
But that's pretty much all you have to do, with a minimal amount of heating, because the temperatures just don't vary.
Joe, I'm just flashing up the pictures as you're talking. This blue material here is really almost like a plastic tarp.
Mhm.
It's taped and sealed, and I think, Joe, did it self-adhere? I think it also has a sticky.
Yeah, it might have. Yeah.
So, and then if you zoom in on, I don't know how to zoom in on this thing, but I don't know if you can see my cursor, but there's the blue stuff, which is the air barrier, and then there's 2 rigid foam panels right here. So you got about, Joe, is that like 3 or 4 inches of
It was
rigid
4
foam?
inches.
And then there's furring strips on the outside, and then they put it over it. So basically, no air gets in and out unless you want it to, and you're insulated to the max on this.
Yeah.
Well, you really are insulated. Yeah, I mean, what they put in the attic was max, and you are a pretty good R value on the outside. So I guess that's a true statement. But it really is more the air tightness of the structure.
And you can see here, Joe, to that exact point, that the outside sheathing actually wraps inside. So there's just there's no breaks in the exposure to the outside. And you can see even
Everything's sealed.
inside, this is taped. So I guarantee you, none of the buildings that any of us are sitting in tonight have anything even remotely approaching this. This is a ceiling, and it's taped like that. And then even the foundation, right, Joe, was insulated.
Yeah, that's a product that looks like cement, but it's actually rigid insulation. And they make that now to make it look like foundation.
And so this is a different. I'm going to stop sharing. That's the Connecticut. That's the Farmington River.
Right.
Took a
Recognize it.
But you know, for the developer to and there, he has taken advantage of all of the incentives and rebates that he can that help to afford the project. But you know, kudos to the developer who is really trying to make this work.
Is there an effort to try to retrofit houses this way?
Well, you can. It's called a deep energy retrofit, but it tends to be fairly expensive because you really have to take
Yeah.
apart.
Right.
So there are things that you can do to help air seal your house, but to try to get to a level of passive house with a regular house that was built in 23 like mine or 1970, it's not going to happen unless you strip the thing down completely.
But the broad point, Joe, I think you put a punctuation mark on it, is that you're building new, and Catherine, it could be a municipal structure, it could be a resident, it could be any of that. Shame on us at this point, because this isn't even cutting edge anymore, and it's not more expensive, especially in light of incentives.
Excuse me, why didn't they design that house so it could have solar on it?
It will have solar on it.
But the roofing wasn't appropriate for solar, it's appropriate for snow. I mean,
It's gonna have solar.
Well, there was a pretty big discussion about flat roofs.
or not even that, but slanted roof, a slanted
Yeah.
roof.
Right. I mean, or not a gable end roof.
Right,
And
no gables.
I think that,
Yeah,
right,
gables.
so the developer was really going for, he wanted the housing to look traditional. And Bernie said this was the third stage of this development. Every time they've gotten better and better with wrapping the houses and making them more airtight, but it was a challenge with gable roofs. There's no doubt about it. And if you have a roof that faces south, it can have a gable end on
On the north side.
yeah.
Right.
And even though Joe has to cover his ears, that this is a low income facility, and I really think the mood that you get here, I think the aesthetics are important, and I don't think you want to make it look industrial or anything like that. So if it's a little bit of, I think that is something you have to take into account along with the pure energy aspects of it.
Mm-hmm.
It would surprise me if West Hartford Housing Authority knew about this or knew about passive house at all. That's really an issue for me. And maybe I just need to check into that, find out what they do know and what they don't know. But they shouldn't be building any housing without, looking at a passive house design.
That's right.
Do we have any more information about what's happening in Bishop's Corner, Catherine?
At the Fellowship Housing?
Yeah.
Well, the lady who gave the passive house presentation at the Eversource Net Zero conference, Susan, what's her name? Olson? Thompson or something.
Okay.
That's it.
She was involved in that project.
Oh, okay.
So they should have a good handle on that. I don't think that is that's not a housing authority project.
No. That's a private
The
developer.
housing authority itself, I know, is building some projects, and I have no idea what standards they are using.
Right.
It might be worth reaching out to them. It might be worth suggesting they tour this facility that you just toured.
Right.
That might be some outreach that, as a commissioner, we could do. The other thing I was going to say is, for my part, I'm going to recommend that they don't wait too long to form the building committee for St. Brigid's. I'd like that committee to have some input into what goes into the RFP, not wait till after people are hired, to then form a building committee, because they tend to kind of push that out. And the town does a lot of the legwork first. So I will push for that from my angle. That town literally just closed on that piece of property the other day. And I just transferred the utilities into our name.
One other quick,
We now do officially own St. Brigid's.
if only whatever it is, idea, not economics or economics can get done, then we'll be rolling.
Well, I also think we could ask that a member of this commission be represented on that building committee as well. They could recruit from the outside as well, but maybe someone from this commission should be on that. Should be just a automatic representative on that building commission.
One quick interjection. This commission that we're on is really about reducing energy, reducing greenhouse gas, adopting clean energy. But what's going on is becoming clearer and clearer is that mitigation of greenhouse gas, i.e. reduction, is important. But the climate is changing, and so we need to be thinking in terms of resiliency, which is to say, that's why Joe would bring up something like a microgrid, which is much more resilient.
Yes.
Passive house construction, if you are without power for whatever reason, you'd rather be in that house than in my house, because it's like living to a certain extent in a thermos bottle. You're going to stay warm a lot longer. It wouldn't be so. Just making the point that resiliency is popped up because of the severity of the weather as really something we also have to keep in sight. And some of these do double duty. They mitigate the greenhouse gas and they make us more resilient to all sorts of weather events, climate events. Right. Catherine, I think are we down to town reports yet? Let's see. St. Brigid's VW settlement. I don't think anything came of that. That's a fund that's available because of the VW scandal, right? And you are on mute, Catherine. Catherine, you're on. Put your mic on. You're still muted. Oh dear. Okay.
There it is. Got it.
You got it.
It somehow moved to the top. It was at the bottom. What hasn't happened on the VW settlement yet is the round 3 funding from DEEP. There was supposed to be part of it for certain classes of vehicles. That part of it does not sound well suited to the town. Another part of the round 3 funding is focused on EVSE, electric vehicle supply equipment, which includes charging stations and infrastructure. That is something the town is interested in. The first webinar they held only covered vehicles. They said that by the end of September, one day from now, they would hold another webinar focused on the EVSE funds. That has not happened yet. So we are still waiting for the state to hold a webinar to tell us what the process is and what the application process will look like for EVSE. There is interest in the town of West Hartford. I have been in several discussions with Public Works. I still haven't figured out their approach to this because it seems like a lot of stuff they're thinking about is still in their heads and not ready for prime time yet. But we would like to contemplate applying for some of those funds when they are released. So I'll update you on that later, but right now we're in a holding pattern with DEEP.
Right. Catherine, while you got your mic on, American Rescue Funds, I know any of those coming, some are coming to West Hartford, yes. I don't know if any of them are going to capital programs that this commission would be interested in. I think not. I think more training than.
Most of the ARA funding that has come, I think the town plans to use more for, yes, not for capital projects, for compensation, back pay, yeah, I don't even know how to describe it, but not for building ventilation projects. There's more on the services side, employment, economic development, and assistance on those fronts. So that's what I've heard. I don't know exactly where the funding will be spent, but I think we did put forward quite a lot of capital improvement projects, both for in terms of schools and town buildings. It was more to accelerate capital improvement projects and ventilation projects that were already in our capital plan that we've been hoping to do, some of which keep getting pushed off for, you know, emergency projects that supersede them, like roofs, leaky roofs and things like that. And we had asked whether maybe some of these projects could be accelerated and covered with some of these fundings. And I don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's just worth stating that. And you put your finger, if I could wave a wand, it would be improving ventilation and energy recovery mechanisms in the ventilation system, so we can have both more clean air to our kids and our residents at the same time as we can have energy efficiency. Right now, we sacrifice one for the other. Clean air comes at the cost of energy efficiency. And that's too bad from our standpoint. If we ever think that there's a way for us to remake that case in a different way, I think we're all ears. I think I put on very quickly the solar incentives. The residential solar incentive plan is changing. I think any day now, PURA, Public Utility Regulatory Authority, should be coming out with that plan. When they do, I think we the commission are going to have to do a library session or a communication session for residents, because it's pretty different and I think favorable. So I want people to know about it. And we have really covered item E, and I think we have to come back next month and finish that one. Catherine, any energy updates? I know there's nothing on the battery electric side, but energy updates.
No, we have still not heard on our grant. Still pending out there. I guess no news is good news. And then I don't really have an energy report for us this month. I will provide one next month.
Great.
Sorry.
No, I think that's okay. I think generally the pattern was, I think we're back now. People are on the municipal side and on the schools. The buildings are no longer empty. Town hall has people in it. We're air conditioning, we're heating, we're doing all that stuff. So the little dip that we had has been filled in. The divot is no longer there, which Okay. I guess all of us. David Rowe, I think you're the public in this meeting. If you want to make a comment.
Well, no, I think, no, I mean, clearly there's so much on our plate to think about. And I appreciate going through this because there are things going on that I did not appreciate and I need to get smart about. You know, I have someday, I have a whole bunch of crazy ideas that I would love to float amongst you to see if they're totally inappropriate or not. Most of my ideas are, but some of them fit very well with what you were just talking about that I was unaware of, particularly this passive house that a building project that you described. I mean, to me, that's really important, particularly for low income housing, which, you know, we have a real responsibility to me, that's one where we communicate well with the Environment and Sustainability Committee. That I'm sure they're interested in that topic area. We ought to be able to find a common collaboration with them in that kind of thing, for example. So anyway, I'm all ears still, and I just want to learn more at this stage.
Great. And actually, before we close out, which we'll do momentarily, you said something, David. So on page 24, that thing that blue and green exhibit that we talked about briefly, those are all ideas that are at least half baked. But maybe I'm going to suggest that we open up another page, and we'll, maybe for want of a better term, we'll just now call it crazy ideas.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of things. Dave Mello, who's been uncharacteristically silent in this meeting, was a research scientist. A lot of what was crazy when he is no longer crazy. It's things that we once dreamed of are now realities, and I'm sure that will be the same in our world too. So I think it's fully appropriate that we have a place to just put a little corral where we can put crazy ideas in there. And then once in a while, maybe we have a glass of wine and see what we can make out of them.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, in my world, which is very much in research, but it's more biological research than engineering research, crazy ideas are wonderful because they get a conversation going and suddenly you realize you have something you didn't have before.
That's right. And I think that's what we want to happen. I think that's what is beginning to happen here. So, okay.
Good. Super.
Well, it's 7:59 and 27 seconds. So,
Bernie, is our next meeting on the 27th?
okay, that's a good question, Joe. So is that we're in
October the 27th.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Yes, that's a Wednesday night as well.
Okay.
All right. Well,
So Bernie, I would propose we have a couple of, it's been an hour and a half. We have a couple of options. We could continue and go through this page 24 now a little bit, checking off, or we can stop. People can, if they want to go to the Conservation and Environment Commission, I would bet they're still going on leaf blowers. And we can, have everyone look over this individually and talk more about it next time.
I like option 2.
yeah, let's call it quits here. Because I think I could, just what I know, and I think we could take a lot of stuff right off of this and flesh a few things out and then have a more focused conversation next week or next month on the 27th.
And I mean, would it even be reasonable if we had ideas that we could submit them to you earlier so that we could even pass them around a bit to see if it would generate any additional thoughts? If we send them into you with that, and then distribute them.
Yeah, we could, why don't we do a send to all?
Yeah. I don't know that I have everybody's email address. Do we have how do we manage, would we manage that? Do we have can you send out an email that has everybody's address on it?
There is a West Hartford Clean Energy Commission Google group that you can send notices to. Or there's the smaller commission. So we can decide what group
Just
we want to
us.
circulate those messages to.
I'd rather do it just with our group. I don't have anybody else see how crazy I am. So
Well, David, don't forget you're on public TV, so now everybody knows.
okay.
Why doesn't everyone, if you have things you'd like to submit ahead of time, send them to me and I can compile them, and closer to the next meeting, we can send them out together. That sounds good. So send them to me. I think everyone has my email.
Yeah, we do. Great. Okay. Thank you.
Catherine.
Okay, meeting adjourned at 8:02.
Aye.
Thank you very much, guys. Stay safe.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.